Overtired. So tired. Overtired.
Hello, everybody out there. This is Jeff, and I am here with Brett. Christina is not with us. We miss her, and we have replaced her for 1 week only with a fellow who has been name checked more times on this podcast than any of our partners.
It's
probably
true.
We call him Danny Glamour, but his name is Daniel Muro Lamere. He's a writer. He's a poet. He's a hardcore archivist. He's a teacher. Woo! A bunch of kids. Daniel, welcome to Overtired.
Thanks for having me. I do want to say that I don't seek to replace anyone. I'm just happy to be here.
Well, that's a nice spirit with which to enter the podcast.
I still consider you usurper.
Fair enough.
Bend the knee.
Gauntlet thrown.
Daniel is actually in my guest room right now. He is guesting on this podcast from my guest room. And his setup is really depressing because our guest room is still the COVID guest room, which means it's not a guest room at all. It's just
but there's lots of books.
Everything. Yeah, there's some books. That's
What
right.
is a COVID guest room?
We turned it into a treadmill room, and there's no longer a bed in there.
Oh, I see. Like
And-
a pandemic guest room.
And
Okay.
because nobody came over, you could just throw things into any room, and it didn't matter. It never came around to bite you in the ass. That's what Daniel is. He's basically
And the air is not
in
safe
the
to
jail
breathe.
in the basement. The air is not safe to breathe. No. So anyway, hello.
Hello.
Here we are.
Hi.
Go ahead, Brett. You got something?
I gotta warn everyone. My family's in town for Christmas, and I had some burning questions from my brother that maybe we'll get into later. But I invited him over for bourbon at noon, and I drank 2 glasses. We'll say like singles, but I drank 2 singles at noon, and I just crashed. After he left, I was just worn out. And now I'm here on a podcast, and I'm basically in recovery mode. I don't know what's happening around me right now.
Well, you could do the exercise where you go green walls, framed pictures, bass guitar, and another bass guitar. What do I see in there? Treadmill on its side. That's not how those go.
It is a treadmill on its side. You're not wrong. I have a standing desk that I can elevate and then lower this treadmill down, and it's a walking desk. But for the purpose of podcasting, I lower it and sit in a chair like a normal person.
So, Daniel, I've said a lot about who you are, but actually, why don't you take control of the narrative? Tell us who you are, Daniel.
Oh, my. Well, hello. I'm Daniel Muro Lamere, a.k.a. Danny Glamour. There's a long origin story there, but I'll spare the listeners. I teach high school English and a class called AVID, which is like a college prep class, and critical ethnic studies. And I'm a dad, and I got some animals that live in my house, and I write poetry sometimes, and I blog about music sometimes. And I would love it if people would come hang out with me on Mastodon sometimes. So that's I think what. Oh, and I'm an elderly punk rock hardcore person. So
Elderly.
In punk rock ears, yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're as old now as Bob Murderer was when I was in the punk rock scene.
Oh, Bob Murderer. There was a
That's hard
time.
to say. That's like rural juror.
Murderer.
Yeah, there was a time when you could see that guy reliably on public transit. I think we had a similar schedule for a while, coming from Whittier to downtown, and in Minneapolis, and also at the Triple Rock Social Club. You'd often see him swallowing large quantities of cider.
Yep.
Okay, I want to say something as I'll be a stand-in for the listener.
Thank you.
I have spent time with these two together before in person, and while I came up in the punk rock Minneapolis thing, I was not in the parallel existence, the multiverse existence of the hardcore scene here, which both Brett and Daniel were deep in. And so every once in a while, one of them will just go, "Yeah, like Bob Murderer." and I just encourage you listeners to just nod your heads and smile. You'll get somewhere with it.
I think it's probably a a phrase that would be worth Googling, and I think that all would be revealed if the listener Googled Bob Murderer. But also, I was thinking,
Robert. Oh, sorry.
no, what? Oh,
Robert.
yeah, Robert Homicide.
Robert Homicide. Is his Christian name?
Yeah, that's right. I was thinking today or recently about how we all do sort of come from punk rock, but I think each of us sort of in a different corner or niche part of that at the same time, which is funny for a town as small as Minneapolis.
Yes. And back in the day, there was as the 90s went on, there was much more sort of intersection. So if you take an example like the band Dillinger 4, which is like
classic,
a punk rock / not you call them punk rock or hardcore? What do you call them?
I call them pop punk.
Pop punk, yeah, that's true.
I asked Patty on Twitter not long ago, is Dillinger 4 a hardcore band? And he said no, but heavily influenced by hardcore. So I don't know. He's one of the four. So that's
because they were, in a way, the Dillinger 4 were the bridge between the sort of punk rock, noise rock scene and then the hardcore scene. And there was, when I was in a band and playing, like, there was such a division. And then as the years went on, the two scenes just started to sort of like, intermesh in a really cool way, so that now it's kind of everyone's history. But I will tell you, when you guys show me, like, I saw this YouTube page today by, what was the guy's name? Dan Zimmerman, yeah. Dan Zimmerman, who is, we explained this archive because it's incredible.
The page is called 25 After, and it's, Dan used to play guitar in Harvest. I think he later moved to Brazil, and I think he might live in Spain now.
Wow.
I'm not entirely sure, but he, used to always have a camcorder over his shoulder at every show. And so, a lot of us knew that there was this, vault of, content, and, we're like, when is he ever going to do anything with this? And so, in the last handful of years, he's digitized all these shows, and he releases them, as best he can, 25 years to the date after, the show happened, and he'll like release it, at, showtime, 7-8 PM or whatever.
A live stream, essentially.
Yeah. On YouTube. And sometimes
25-year delay on the
and sometimes stream. It's like 26 or, with the Code 13 disembodied video that I sent to these guys earlier. I think that was like 27 years ago, but also really great example of worlds colliding, because those were bands that existed in very different scenes. But, it's funny, Jeff, I don't want to contradict what you said before, but to my mind, and maybe this is evidence of our different experiences within punk, I feel like the 90s were a time when there were way more mixed bills and bands that were really different that played together or were on comps together, like the No Slow All Go compilation.
Oh,
and stuff.
Man. Yeah,
and I feel like things really sort of calcified, where people kind of ended up in their own corners as time went on, where, it'd be like a hardcore show and just be like 4 mosh metal bands. And then, there'd be like a crust show. And whereas, I remember some of the first shows I went to, it was like really wild, pairings of styles. And that was so great. And I miss that.
The first show I went to after moving to Minneapolis was at the University of Minnesota, where I was attending school. Did not finish there, but
me neither.
Saltines and Dillinger 4 played at, like, I don't remember the name of the venue there, but it was literally across the street from the hall where I lived, and I showed up. My No Slow I'll Go was seminal for me, like back in high school when that came out, and we trekked to Extreme Noise, and I think we met Felix that day, and we bought No Slow I'll Go and got an introduction to the Minneapolis scene. And then Matt and I, all of a sudden, we get these flyers for this Dillinger 4 Saltine show, and we absolutely showed up for it. And I believe it was all ages, no alcohol. Wow. So it was a kind of a weird show for me. But yeah, that's history right there. That's good.
I was wondering if we need to have an explanatory comma about who Felix von Havoc is, or what Extreme Noise is, or any of that. Maybe
I feel like that is Minneapolis history. We should definitely do that.
Can I segue into it by saying that like Daniel and Brett both have such deep connections to these really key parts of Minneapolis punk and hardcore history, and things like Extreme Noise and names like Felix become very significant, so that if you listen closely and then meet someone who was from Minneapolis in those days, you could just say one of those words.
Felix, who we're on a first name basis with apparently, but goes by Felix von Havoc, and I don't know well enough to know his real name, but Felix von Havoc is central.
I'm not going to share it here. It's not that difficult to discover online, but it's not for me to put it out there. I think he was a transplant from DC to Minneapolis, and I think had gotten sober and just really threw himself at the local scene. He sang in a band called Destroy, and maybe most notably Code 13 for a really long time. And he still runs a label called Havoc Records, which is really great. And he was one of the people that were behind getting Extreme Noise Records off the ground, which is, in I think next year will be 29 years of a volunteer run punk rock record store.
An anarchist record store.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's, I volunteered there for a couple of years way back when. And it's a really important institution. And I went there a couple of weeks ago. It had been a very long time. And I had had a hospitalization, which is a whole other conversation. And so I was like running errands to sort of treat myself for being able to be out in the world, and went and he like rang me up, and I was like, I wonder, I knew that I knew who he was. Like, we'd been neighbors, in East Phillips and Minneapolis. And like, we worked on building a stage at a show space that ended up burning down. And so like, we knew each other, it just felt weird to like, hey man, I don't know. I get weird about stuff like that sometimes. And so I was wondering, like, maybe he's doing the thing I'm doing, or maybe he has no idea who I am. But it was cool to see him and to know that he's still volunteering there, and just really a lifer and an important part of what I think is an important scene, even though my participation in it is somewhat, lacking these days. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is this the mental health corner now?
Let's do it.
I'll kick it off. I survived my Christmas. My sister got delayed by the storm in the north here, going from Ohio to Minnesota, and she didn't show up until like 4 p.m. on Christmas Day. And then they went ahead and had Christmas dinner. And given that between Elle and I and our dietary restrictions, we can eat almost nothing. Except for like seeds. They had Christmas dinner without us, which I'm fine with. And then I showed up at like from 6 to 8, maybe. We opened all the kids' presents, and everyone got to give me hugs and say, thank you, Uncle Brett. And I'm working on getting what?
You and Elle opened all the kids' presents?
No.
Thank you, Uncle Brett.
We were
Uncle Brett.
we were present for the opening of the presents from us to them. I'm working on getting the kids to call Elle Auntie Elle. We're not married, and in my family, I think that's a big deal. And it's Uncle Brett and Elle, and like Elle and I we're kind of in it for the long haul. We don't believe in marriage as a pairing. We're not big on the certificate. But I really I don't know how many years I'll have to be with her before I can be like Auntie Elle. They still call my ex-wife Aunt Aditi. So,
yeah,
that's not okay.
That's got to be passed along.
Yeah, you would think, but the fact is, Uncle Brett, could change. Like, I don't see a forever with anybody. Like, I love Elle, and I will be with her for as long as it's good for both of us. But when it's not, like, I want the ability to move on. I don't want a bunch of kids feeling dejected because something went awry in my relationship. Anyway, all right, that's beside the point. My family has remained in town, and they don't leave until tomorrow. And we made a visit today. Elle taught the nieces how to cast on, which is how you start a knitting project. You cast on to the needle. Yeah.
Oh,
so it's like you start with a slip knot, and then there's a series of knots that you tie around the needle to begin a knitting project. And one of my nieces has gotten pretty good at knitting, but she didn't know how to start the project. So Elle was there to teach her to cast on. She tried to teach a couple of the others. I learned a lot very quickly about the learning styles of my nieces. I have one niece who has an interest, a curiosity, but zero patience. And as soon as something is too hard, she fucked it up as much as she could, and then like held it up as like, did I do it? Obviously she didn't. And then she was off. She was gone. But the niece who actually wanted to learn this was so patient and so determined, and she got it. And that's the kid I have a lot of hope for. I think she will be, I think 9 maybe.
Got it. Yeah. It is.
I lose track. They keep growing.
It's lovely when they're at that point where it's like they want it.
Yeah.
So, anything you do to help is going to be in service of that, not in service of like.
Yeah, but she had the patience. She had the determination to keep getting it wrong until she got it right. I don't have that. Like I more relate to my older niece who just did not have the patience to learn this. I felt for her. I understood. Like, yeah, you should just go, because this is going to take more determination than you have. You don't have the level of determination necessary to beat this learning curve. You're not that interested. And I think she's probably fine if she's interested enough, but I wouldn't doubt there's some kind of ADHD going on in her. Obviously, I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose that. And she's also very young.
Well, you've had a couple drinks.
But anyway, so I have this burning curiosity about, like, these kids are being homeschooled, which I am innately object to.
Me too.
Given how religious their parents are, I don't like the idea of them being homeschooled. But in conversations, holy shit, these girls know so much, and they have such a grasp on history and science and technology. They're using this method where they learn songs, like extended 13-minute long songs about like historical events. And they can sing like the history of the Reformation, for example. Like she was able to recite it all at the dinner table.
Just real big. They might be Giants fans, huh?
Sure. But they're also able to pull from that and understand the connections. And the interesting thing about it is, like, in school, we learned American history. We learned what happened in the 1800s, the 1900s, but we didn't necessarily learn what happened around the world at the same time. We didn't understand the global implications of what was happening. And these kids have already learned that at the ages of 7 to 11 years old. And I was very fascinated, and they understood enough about science. Like, I showed them pictures of my astrophotography, and they started talking to me about the theoretical existence of microscopic black holes. And I was like, holy shit, how does a family that doesn't believe in evolution understand advanced astrophysics? And so I had to have my brother over for drinks to talk about like exactly. I needed to know, what is it you believe and how are you conveying this to your children? And
I believe in the power of song.
Do you think that they maybe believe in black holes as long as they're small enough?
Here's the thing is my brother believes in evolution. He couldn't speak for his wife. He said she didn't care whether evolution was real or not, but he believes in evolution. He believes in the earth being billions of years old, not 6,000 years old. And he doesn't believe in hell. That was the big revelation for me, is that their brand of Christianity he called it nihilism, which means
They're
something.
Nihilist, Donnie. They can't hurt you.
Means something different to me, but for him, it meant that instead of eternal damnation and burning for eternity, those who didn't believe were just snuffed out. Like, there was a reward for the saved.
Wow.
But there's no punishment. There's no eternal punishment for not finding Jesus. And that was
kind of nihilism, isn't it?
It's a kind of Judaism, really.
Yeah, but it's not like arguing with God like Judaism is so wonderful at, like it's a little.
It is a little bit nihilistic. I also determined he kept throwing around this term right-leaning anarchist. Like he saw himself. I
know some of them.
He saw himself as a
libertarian is way fewer syllables.
Yeah, I know.
Libertarian.
I was like, you mean libertarian, right? He's like, well, it's a circle, and I'm like, yeah. And when you cross this gap at the bottom, you're a libertarian.
Yeah.
So for the rest of the conversation, he was a libertarian, but it was enlightening. I appreciated the conversation.
Yeah. It's nice to open that conversation up.
And that's basically my mental health right now. That sums it up.
Each week when I listen, I always think like, well, what would I say if I was in the mental health? Like, what is my? So it's kind of I really appreciate this as a feature because it's an opportunity as a listener to reflect, on one's own situation. But so yeah, I just recently, I alluded to it earlier, but I had a sort of a health scare. My gallbladder went, I'm trying to remember the sophisticated term that's tits up. And Thanksgiving afternoon, I was getting ready to prepare some stuffing and I was like, oh, I feel kind of gassy. And, and I just was like, well, that sucks. I was uncomfortable. And I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't have had those dried cherries, and then I just like went about my business because I had a meal to prepare and had to get the kids together and get to my parents. And didn't think much of it. And then that night, laying down in bed, I had like really bad back pain and really didn't sleep very well. But I, at that point had been really battling some insomnia for some months and months. And so I was like, well, I guess it's just another night where I'm up, and then the next day it was like a lot of stomach and back pain. And I was like, oh man, I don't know. I guess I'll call the nurse line. I'm out of ideas. And the woman at the nurse line, who I think probably saved my life, told me to go to the ER. And she's like, yeah, if you don't feel like you can drive yourself, you should get an ambulance. And I was like, oh, okay. And for me, like calling I guess they call it the care line, calling the care line and going to the emergency room are, worlds apart. I feel like there's a lot of steps in between. And so I was like, oh God, and she thought it might've been my heart. So yeah, so then I go to the ER, and again, they thought maybe it was my heart, a thing I mentioned a few times to them because they were telling people 9 hours for a wait. And this is, 5 p.m. on Black Friday. And, I want to be clear that I'm not complaining about these people. I'm complaining about our healthcare system, but there are a shit ton of people that end up clogging up our emergency rooms because they are in a position where they have to use it as their primary care because, if you don't have the right kind of job, then you don't have insurance or if you're poor or on disability, it's just fucked, And so there's people in all manner of disrepair. And then me who can't sit still because of the discomfort. So I'm pacing around and getting side eye from a lot of people. One woman in particular just kept giving me, fucking daggers. And then, I'd walk past
take it like a man, son.
Yeah, exactly. I'd walk past the sort of the check-in booth, and they're like, sir, is there something we can help with? Like, no, I just can't get comfortable. I'm sorry. And, and then I'm still like trying to go to the bathroom a lot because I don't know what's going on. And 2 hours later, I finally got the EKG. So thank God it wasn't my heart and I didn't die of a heart attack in the chairs. And then finally they did like a CT scan, and they were like, I'm really sorry. We don't have any beds. We think it's your gallbladder, and we're going to have to check you in. But again, we don't think we have any beds. So we're just going to have you back in this back hallway. And sorry again. And then, I had the surgery the next day. And so then, it's that weird thing of like having a conversation after surgery and not being sure when it started or how many times they had to try to have it with you. But then, it's the surgeon again. She's like, yeah, and explaining everything, of course, in all these like 12-syllable words. But she's like, yeah, it was took a lot longer than we thought. And it's like, well, it's all the same to me. I don't know. I was out. But, it was really swollen, and, parts of it were gangrenous, other parts were necrotic. And I was like, okay, I was like, hold on, did you, what? Yeah, I was like, gangrene? And she's like, yeah. And I was like I could have died? And she's like, yeah. And so, and so because it was like 4 or 5 times the size it was supposed to be. So 4 scars. Wow. Because the two became one. And so they could get it out. And, and then I was like, well, maybe I'm being a weirdo and sensationalizing, a thing I'm prone to doing from time to time. And so I was like, maybe this wasn't as bad. And she, because she didn't lead with the thing like, well, you almost died. And so maybe, she was like, yeah, it could have happened, but we don't really know. So a few days later, I got like my chart like sent to me on my phone, and I copied it and pasted it and sent it to my sister-in-law, who's a nurse in California. And I was like, yeah, I guess I just don't really feel like I know how close I really got. And she's like, pretty fucking close, dude. Like, that was really gnarly. I'm glad you got checked out. So wow, that was a weird thing because, and I like had to work this out in therapy, which is the mental health component of it, the having almost died, but not having experienced sort of the near death, in the way that, with adrenaline.
You didn't have the diagnosis in advance. You were told in post that you almost died.
Well, and kind of had to piece it together over the course of like 10 days. And so it was like, and then what? And I always want everything to be meaningful, and there's no way to, and now what shall I do with this? Well, it's, the same thing you should have done before, like just be a good person. So, but I'm very aware of, sort of mortality and also how fucked up our medical system is, although nurses are amazing and I got really good care, and obviously the surgeon did a great job. I do want to just tell people as a public service announcement, especially dudes, I feel like, to like get things checked out. I've got other people in my life that have had some things happen recently where I kind of wonder if things could have been prevented had they gone in. One of which was unfortunately fatal. So, it's just, so people should get things checked out. Cause like if I had just tried to tough it out, another night, I mean, who knows? Right. So,
when I had appendicitis, I waited 3 days. I thought it was a bad flu of some kind with a lot of stomach pain. And they told me if I had waited one more day, I'd be dead.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
I went to the ER on Tuesday this week because my watch alerted me that my heart rate had hit 120 BPM while it had determined that I was sitting still. And I was cooking at the time. I was like slowly ambling around the kitchen and my heart rate was at 120. So I like sat down and it didn't go down. I was ranging between 110 and 130 for an hour before I decided, okay, I'm going to go to the ER. I'm going to get this checked out. It's a Tuesday night on like Christmas break. It was pretty empty. I got seen very quickly. They did a bunch of tests. They determined I wasn't having a heart attack and like did some other tests to just see if they could figure out what was going on. Didn't resolve anything, but they were very cool about the care, and I really appreciated that. I feel like a hypochondriac when it comes to that stuff. Heart disease runs in my family, and I worry every time something abnormal happens with my heart, I worry. I'm very paranoid that I will die of a heart attack. So that was comforting, but it was a weird way to go into a square dance with my mom.
Wait a minute. Sorry. My brain just like rebooted.
That was so my parents had their square dance.
Yes.
And
this is an anniversary thing, right?
Yes. My excuse for not participating in the square dance was I just went to the ER and they told me to take it easy for a couple days.
Square dancing for a lot of people is taking it easy, I think. But so
swing your partner round and round.
Yeah, not if you've been swung.
Yeah, no shit. So I'll be quick to wrap up my mental health situation. So then I had to convalesce for a week, and public education is a wonderful thing, but it was really eye-opening how much the job crept into my life when I was supposed to be just like laying around being grateful to be alive and
the job of being a high school teacher.
Yeah, there was like multiple things a day, and it wasn't really anybody's fault. It's just shit trickles down on teachers, and it really it's really given me pause to think like, I wonder how much longer I can do this. And that's not to say that I'm making a decision or not. It's just that's been a weird thing because it's that, I have felt so fortunate to have found teaching and sort of fell into it and felt like, I don't know, to have a job that I really love and feel like I'm good at feels like such a gift. And to sort of be questioning that is a weird place to be. And also, as an ADHD person, I recently ran smack into the national or international stimulant shortage. I take dextroamphetamine for my ADHD, and good luck finding that anywhere. The guy at Walgreens was like, yeah, there's none in the state in our warehouses.
Like Focalin?
Dexedrine, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
I think it's different. And
yeah, it is.
They were able, I take 15 milligrams, and they were able, and it's really fun to be the person with the compromised executive functioning, to be like trying to be the conduit between the psychiatrist and the pharmacies. But I was able to find a pharmacy that was able to fill a 10 milligram prescription. And then I just, cut one in half. And I have to tell you, being back on those meds today, there was a combination of that, and my daughter had a play date today, and we are not tidy people. So we spent hours like tidying our house. I was a sweaty mess. But the physical activity early in the day and the clean house and the pills, I just felt like so much better today. And I'm so grateful. So I really was kind of in rough shape the past few days, and it's nice to be back. So that is my mental health update.
I have a new chapter I'm in with. Initially it was the shortage and there was no Vyvanse. I may or may not have gotten some from one of the people on the air with me right now. I can't remember who. But I got a letter from my insurance company that said, essentially, we're no longer going to cover you taking Vyvanse until you have failed at, and those were the words, any of these 4 alternatives. And they gave me the alternatives: Focalin, what you're taking, Daniel, Adderall, which it does hit different than Vyvanse.
Yeah,
they're basically the same thing. And I almost don't have the energy to be as full of rage as that actually makes me. The idea that they would take a medication I've been taking for, I think, 2 years now. It's worked great for me. I finally have it kind of balanced into an overall sort of cocktail, and then say, hey, guess what? We're going to play a little game. Okay. No more Vyvanse. Now we're going to play fail at Focalin, right?
Yeah, it's
just like, oh my God, those are such different drugs.
That's the ADHD game, man.
Towards that. Yeah. It's like, you're the worst drug dealer ever.
Isn't Vyvanse newer too?
Yeah, Vyvanse is newer than Adderall, but it's the same family as Adderall, but it moves through your system differently.
Right.
It's more directly processed by the liver.
And it's actually partly made so that it was an answer to the problem of snorting Adderall.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like you can't snort Vyvanse.
You can't.
I
mean, you can, but it doesn't do anything.
You can. Part of the reason that works is because it moves differently through your body. So my understanding is that Adderall just hits right away, and is a little bit and drops you off at the door. Like a few hours later.
What about if you cooked it down into a gummy?
That's a good idea. I'll let you know.
Yeah, let us know. By the way, there's a new cannabis shop in my neighborhood called Oofda Cannabis.
Oh my God, so Minnesota.
The most Minnesotan thing ever.
So we're gonna have to take a sponsor break here.
Let's do it.
I'm gonna tell you about Simply Safe. Did you know that property crimes like burglaries and package theft spike over the winter? That's why now is the best time to secure your home with award-winning home security. Simply Safe is the home security system that I recommend to everybody. Make it your resolution to start the new year with greater peace of mind and safety for you and your family. Here's why we love it. Simply Safe was named the best home security system of 2022 by U.S. News and World Report, a third year in a row. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect TM technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real so you can get priority police response. Simply Safe is whole home security with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door. HD security cameras for inside and out, smarter ways to detect motion that alert you only when a threat is real, and hazard sensors that detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. 24/7 professional monitoring service costs under $1 a day, less than half the price of ADT's traditional professionally installed system. With the top-rated Simply Safe app, stay in complete control of your system anytime, anywhere. Arm or disarm, unlock for a guest, access your cameras, or adjust system settings. Don't miss your chance for massive savings on our favorite security system. Get 20% off your new system at simplysafe.com/overtired today. This is their biggest discount of the year. That's simplysafe.com/overtired. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/overtired. Go today and claim a free indoor security camera plus 20% off your order with interactive monitoring. Simplysafe.com. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Do you ever look at your favorite comedians and think, wow, they're so successful, they must be so confident?
Every night on TikTok.
Right? So guess what? They're all hanging on by a thread just like us. Thanks to social media, self-esteem is a huge part of our everyday experience. The same goes for people who make us laugh. Self-Esteem Party is the perfect blend of comedy and honesty. Each week, comedian and self-proclaimed superstar Alana Johnson interviews one of her showbiz pals and dives right into the core of who they really are and how they feel about themselves. Alana playfully guides her friends through their own self-exploration while simultaneously cracking them up. Each guest reveals a different struggle with their own self-esteem, self-image, and self-care. They're powerful, relatable conversations interspersed with Alana's exuberant comedy. So the next time you're feeling down on yourself, check out Self-Esteem Party and let Alana cheer you up. New episodes every Tuesday at thesonarnetwork.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
I'm going to talk about Text Expander. Get your team communicating faster so they can focus on what's most important. With Text Expander, your team's knowledge is at their fingertips. Get your whole team on the same page by getting information out of silos and into the hands of everyone that needs to use it. You can share your team's knowledge across departments so your team is sending a unified message to your customers and isn't spending time reinventing the wheel. Here's how it works. First, you store it, whatever it is. Keep your company's most used emails, phrases, messaging, URLs, and more right within Text Expander. Then you could share it, get your whole team access to all the content they need to use every day. Then you expand it. Deploy the content you need with just a few keystrokes on any device across any apps you use. It is that easy. Text Expander is available on Mac, Windows, Chrome, iPhone, iPad. Overtired listeners, that's you. Get 20% off their first year. Visit textexpander.com/podcast to learn more about Text Expander. Okay, ad reads. Check.
Oh, we did it. Is Danny, are you participating in Gratitude?
Yeah, I got one.
Oh,
right.
yeah. Way to come prepared.
Let's kick it off with our guest.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. I am not a power user of anything that I've ever put my hands to. I would like to say that off the top. But and also the laptop I use belongs to the school district for which I work. And so I am not able to do fun things with it, nor would I know how. But I'm a big fan of the iOS app Two Dots, which is a game. It's a game wherein one connects dots, and there's nice like chill music that I rarely turn on. But in those times that I think I've heard others refer to as interstitial times throughout the day, I like to just have little two dots going. And it's good for sometimes I might be watching a show and playing two dots at the same time because that's how my brain works, especially late in the day when I'm not medicated. But it's just a nice little game. I'll tell you now, I'm on level. Let's look.
Where you at?
Well, I want to tell you, but hold on. Okay. Games over here. Click on it. I've been playing this bad boy for like 8 years. Looks like we're on level 2,938. So,
jeez.
So that's
good. Good haptic feedback, that game.
Yeah.
The little vibrations
and accessibility for the, thankfully I don't believe colorblind, or if I am, it's just a touch of the colorblindness. But I, they do have a colorblind feature if one needs that.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I've also been playing for 8 years. The reason it's not on my phone is the same reason it's never on my phone, because it's never on my phone for more than 3 days. And I get so hooked and like completely like lost in it that I'm like, gotta delete this app. It's too good.
I've never played this game.
Oh, it's so delightful.
I want to say too, one thing I like about it is that it doesn't feel like they mess with it, whereas like there were other apps that I have enjoyed, both games and otherwise, where it's, a couple of them are getting folded into things at the end of the year, like Dark Sky. And, I'm a big fan of GeoGuessr, but they just did something weird with that. And, I'd like for people to just leave well enough alone, leave my, just don't get in there and mess with my stuff,
Exactly. My pick is a tool by Simon Williamson, who used to work for The Guardian doing sort of journalism hacker shit. And once he left The Guardian, built something called Dataset, which is just an amazing tool for, looking over your kind of SQLite databases. But he also has a bunch of tools that help you create those databases. And so he wrote a tool called S3 OCR. And basically what it allowed me to do was say, hey, there's that bucket over there. I want you to OCR everything in it, right? And that's cool. But the thing that you can do next that's amazing is create a whole index of everything there. So I ended up with this amazing like SQLite database that allows me to interact with the data in these documents in a way that I never dreamed was possible. So anyway, it's a little tool. It's a little tool that allows you to OCR the stuff you have in your S3 bucket. And that just seems so simple, but let me tell you, it's not.
So my pick, for my pick, you have to go back to Byword.
Byword, BYWARD.
BYWORD, Byword.
Great app.
Great app. It was a great, very minimalist, in the spirit of TextMate. Like the first time I opened TextMate, I was a pretty brand new Mac user, and I opened up TextMate, and there was no toolbar, there was no menu, there was nothing.
Yeah.
And it took me, there's this like learning curve you have to go through to realize everything is keyboard based and all of the features are there. You just don't have a Word-esque menu bar to tell you where everything is. Right. Byword was like the pretty version of that for writing markdown text.
I still use Byword.
Yeah, Byword still operates, still great app. And then I found Multi-Markdown by Fletcher Penny, which was a flavor of Markdown that incorporated a bunch of things that standard Markdown didn't, like tables and footnotes and citations, etc. And Fletcher built an app called Multi-Markdown Composer, which currently version 5 is in beta, and I am on the beta for it. And it remains these days my go-to for Markdown editing. The engine that runs all of the text transformations and editing in Multi-Markdown Composer is in NV Ultra. It's basically the same. The underpinnings of Multi-Markdown Composer are available in NV Ultra. He built them as C libraries that are portable to other applications. So that's what you get when you are running NV Ultra. But if you want the full version with basically designed for long form Markdown editing, Multi-Markdown Composer is my pick for the week. And it is an app that I use pretty much daily.
I need to revisit it. I loved it when I think I used it around version 2 or 3.
Yeah,
a bit.
It's version 5 is outstanding. My favorite thing he ever added, which you cannot find in NV Ultra, is table of contents manipulation. So like you set up headings in your document with hash marks to set like heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. Multi-Markdown Composer in the sidebar creates a hierarchy of your headers, and then you can drag one header before another header, and everything between that header and the next header will drag with it. So you can manipulate. Yeah, you can reorganize your document just by dragging the headers around in the table of contents menu bar. And it has a ton of features like that are outstanding.
Awesome.
Yep.
All right.
Byword is $5.99.
Worth it. Yeah, I paid it years ago and I still use it. When my brain's really cluttered and I need to write something, I will just open up Byword. My favorite feature of Byword that does exist in Multi-Markdown Composer and in NV Ultra is Command Option Up Arrow. If your cursor is in a word, Command Option Up Arrow will select the word. You hit it again, it will select the sentence. You hit it again, it will select the paragraph. You hit it again, it'll select the full document. It expands your selection from the cursor position. Hit it again and it opens up Chat GPT.
No, it opens up a wormhole and then you're fucked.
But a microscopic wormhole.
Yeah,
microscopic.
The kind you can believe in, Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you people.
Yeah, you too.
Oh my God, it's over already.
I'm really tired.
Yep.
I feel like we hit a bare minimum of Minneapolis hardcore history.
That's true. Can always do more.
Yeah, it's probably the listeners are probably glad for that.
Well, listeners, I do hope you're glad, whoever you are, because the one listener I know is always listening is on the fucking podcast. So I'm not sure what our analytics are going to look like.
I'll still listen. I liked the sound of my own voice.
Me too. That's true. You guys get some sleep. Well, not yet. You're in the guest room without a bed, but as it goes, get some sleep.
Get some sleep.
Get some sleep. Thanks.
The system is going down now.